Today, I want to talk about something that has to do with contracts. This is what we call our contracts week. The topic that we revolve all this week is around contracts. So, what I want to say is, and you see my cat here in the background. What I want to say is that I use the three-prong contract in certain situations. I don't do it all the time. I do it mainly in situation where I have a seller that is a little difficult to work with. So let's say, let me give you a scenario. You come across a seller that wants full price on the property, right? And ideally, you would like to wholesale it, but there is no room to wholesale it. Let's say the property is worth 100,000. He wants 100 or 110, which I'm sure you see that a lot lately, right? So what I do is I say, and the conversation goes something like where the seller says, you know what, if I can't get the full price for my property, I'm just going to go ahead and keep renting it. Right. So what I say to him is like, okay, I'm going to rent it from you. Is that okay? And so he's like, okay, what do you mean by that? Well, this is what I mean. So if you're willing to rent a property, okay, you come back and say, you give him three options. You send them like you call also a letter of intent, and you say the first option is, I'm going to offer you, keep in mind he wants 100,000 for the property, right? The first option is, I'm going to go ahead and give you 90,000 cash in closing 4 weeks, right? So you can do a wholesale deal. Or I'm going to give you, you want 100, I'm going to give you 100 by a year from now. You're going to rent it anyway, right? So I'm going to have 100 a year from now. And in the meantime, make the rent payment. So that's a lease option to buy. And the third option is, you're going to get 105 or 110 more than the property is worth. But, because I'm going to find a tenant buyer for you. I'm not going to rent the property for you. I'm going to find a tenant buyer for you. The extra 5 or 10K will be my compensation for doing that. And that will be paid to me by the end buyer. So that would be a wholesaling lease option. So you basically create a lease option and you assign the lease option. That's what in fancy terms is called wholesaling lease option. So you have a straightforward agreement where you do a wholesaling agreement, right? I'm buying it for lower so I can resell it, but we can close it and you get your cash in 4 weeks. Number two, I'm going to do a lease option to buy where I'm going to keep renting the property for you for 1 or 2 years, and then I'm going to cash you after that for whatever price you want, full price. Number three is I am going to find a tenant buyer from you, and the buyer, whatever deposit they pay, is my compensation for doing it. And then you're still going to get your 100K in a year or 2 years. So you remove yourself from the situation. So you give him three possibilities here to choose A, B, or C. And then whenever he chooses one of them on the letter of intent, then you're going to follow with a contract that is going to call for the situation. So you do a sale contract. Now, let me make clear that you need to do a sale contract, even if it's a lease option or wholesaling lease option, because then you create a sale contract, you agree on the sale contract, and then you create a lease option to buy agreement or a lease option that you're going to wholesale it. Look at wholesaling lease option as assignments, right? When you do a wholesaling, you can either do a double closing or you can do an assignment. So you assign the sale contract to somebody else for a fee. Same thing with wholesaling lease option. You assign your lease option to somebody else for a fee. So wholesaling lease option is really just an assignment of a lease option instead of being an assignment of a sale contract. Okay, so that's just a fancy term, but it does the same things. So that's the way you do it. And by giving the seller a little bit of an option, there are a couple of things that can happen for you too. Number one, you can do a wholesale, right? Option one. Or this is a way for you to create a rental portfolio. What do you mean? Okay, well, you're doing on number two, you're doing a lease option to buy, right? So you are going to rent the property yourself. So let me give you another little ninja strategy here. You're going to rent the property yourself, right? Let's say you have an agreement for him to rent for 2 years. You do great. 6 months, a year later, you take care of the property. You go ahead and show the payments on the property in time and everything. And then you approach him and you say to him, okay, I would like to keep this property and cash you out. But in order for me to do that, I need to refinance this property and use my past history with you as a reference, as a credit reference, the payments I made to you as a credit reference. And on top of it, but in order for me to do that, I have to be added on title. So now it becomes what they call a subject to. Now, if he adds you on title, then you can refinance it and cash him out without coming up with a down payment, right? So now you do a lease option to buy and you convert this into a purchase later on. So this is just a little ninja strategy on how you can accumulate rental property. And honestly, that's how I started. When I started buying rental properties back in 91, I started doing a lot of lease options and then I converted into refinances and kept the properties. So that's something that I personally did. So hopefully this gave you a little bit of tips here, food for thought. We do have a webinar later today about wholesaling. So make sure that you check out for that. We're going to post a link here with the video, and we have this webinar coming up. So always go to this link. They will post the next webinar if you don't make it to the one tonight. And the other thing is also we have an event coming up in New York City. So in person. So if you want to come see us in New York, we'll be there next month. So make sure that we're going to post a link as well. And I hope to see you live in New York in person. Great training. We're talking about virtual investing, how to accumulate a passive income portfolio virtually, how to do wholesaling virtually. And I know for anybody living in New York City, that's a godsend because it's easier to do it virtually. And you don't have to go that far. You could do it in New Jersey or Long Island, but instead of New York City. Okay, so look for that link as well. So hopefully this gave you some good ideas. Hopefully I'll see you online tonight or I'll see you live in New York. Take care.